Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fresh Perspectives podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Lauren, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am super excited to be speaking with you one-on-one about a topic that has been on my mind recently. It's been inspired from some conversations that I've had with my guests, as well as just reflecting on my own life. And that topic is how to create opportunities in your own life. Now, I'm going to recommend that you check out Meg's episode because I do use something that Meg said as an example in this conversation. And so if you want that full picture, I highly recommend checking out Meg. She is an infectious personality. I had such an amazing conversation with her. So what does it mean to create opportunity in your own life? It means not waiting around for something to happen. Opportunity doesn't come from perfect timing or luck or someone finally noticing and deciding that you're ready for something. Opportunity comes from action. And today, I want to share 4 specific lessons from my own life that I genuinely believe have created opportunities that I could have never planned for or predicted. These aren't theories, they're things that I've actually lived. And my hope is that by the end of this episode, you walk away with a fresh perspective on how to bring about these opportunities in your own life. My first lived experience is tell everybody what you want. About 4 years ago, I was working at a company and I had dreams of moving to Europe. Frankly, I still have dreams of moving to Europe. I told everyone at that company what my dream was, my coworkers, my boss, people I worked with across the business. I was so open and frankly unapologetic about telling people what I wanted. I had heard this phrase before of planting the seeds and then reaping the fruit. And to me, planting the seeds means just putting what you want out there because you never ever know what can result from that. And so that's what I did. I just kept putting it out there and hoping that maybe an opportunity would come about and those seeds that I planted would bear fruit. And something did result from it. We did have a European client at the time who had a role open for an American. They specifically wanted somebody who knew the US market. They wanted them to move to Europe to service their business. This opportunity came from a former boss of mine whose client this was. And when this opportunity came up, she messaged me almost immediately and was like, Rachel, I think this would be an amazing opportunity for you. And here's the thing, I went through the interview process, I sussed out the opportunity. It ended up actually not being the right fit for me at the moment, but I think that's an important part of the story because the point was never about that specific opportunity working out. The point is that it existed for me at all. Because I had been so vocal about what I wanted that when an opportunity came up and my boss heard Europe, she immediately thought, Rachel. Nobody can open a door for you if they don't know what room you're trying to get into. You know, most of us keep our dreams private and close to the chest because we're afraid of looking foolish if things don't work out. But here's the fresh perspective that I want you to walk away with. Visibility is actually that first step to opportunity. The second lesson is you need to know the what, but you don't always need to know the how. This is an example that I'm going to share of starting this podcast. I had a conviction that I really, really wanted to start a podcast. I knew what I wanted it to be about. I knew how I wanted it to feel, but I had no idea how. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to get it out there. I didn't know how to produce it, how to market it, but I did it anyway. And how I did this was I basically started figuring out the how along the way. So I did some research and I looked at some different platforms and the how started to develop. So I didn't just wait to have that how figured out. I started the researching and experimenting and I made and continue to make so many mistakes. My first few episodes were far from perfect. I wasn't releasing them on a proper cadence. I was just trying to get out what I could with what I had. But here's what I know from this experience. If I had waited until I knew how, I'd probably still be waiting. And I think that's true for so many of us. We have this idea in our head that we have to have it all figured out before taking that first step. I've come to believe that the only way the how reveals itself is after you start moving. Preparation has its place, and of course, I wanted to come in feeling somewhat prepared, but you can also hide behind preparation. And so, the fresh perspective that you can take here is just starting and exploring. And again, I talk a lot about curiosity, but I really find that to be true. Get curious about your dreams, get curious about the opportunities that you want to bring in your life, and just start and see where it goes. My third lesson is to ask for forgiveness and not for permission. This one is my favorite because it really changed the trajectory of my life. I was at a company and I was working in a role that I had been for pretty much my entire career. I was moving up the ladder. There was another path that I wanted to go down. And so I'm going to go back to number one. I was planting the seeds. I was telling people that I was thinking of making the shift into this other department, but the opportunity wasn't there yet. That role was just not a thing. So I could have waited and thought, okay, this opportunity doesn't exist. It probably never will. I should just give up. Instead, I just started doing the job. I wasn't asking anyone for permission to start doing it. I just started doing it because I wanted to prove that I was capable of doing the work. And this is actually something that Matt was talking about in his episode. You should check that one out too, because he dropped some truth bombs. But Matt kind of did the same thing. He saw an opportunity and he just kind of started experimenting. And like he said, because if it works, no one's going to be mad at that. So I feel like Matt and I are very similar in that way, where we said, I think there's something here. Let me just start doing it. For me, that actually worked out. A few months later, I was officially asked to take on that role. And I remember kind of being in disbelief, not because I didn't expect it. It was obviously what I was going for, but because I had already been doing it and I was like, wow, it's real now. Like this is I pivoted just because I started doing it and didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait to feel super ready. I felt like I was building that readiness by doing and getting the experience. My confidence came from the action, not the other way around. If you're waiting to feel confident enough to step into something new, confidence isn't a feeling that you have to wait for. It's something you build by doing. So I feel like a lot of us, when it comes to opportunities, kind of sit around and wait for that opportunity to come. But that confidence comes from doing. And so, as much as you can do and create, the more confident that you'll feel exploring new opportunities. And the last lesson, and the lesson that goes back to my conversation with Meg last week, is don't be afraid to fail or look stupid. Meg talked about how she stands with her signs that says, "Tell me your good news," all over New York. And she said that sometimes nobody comes up to her and she doesn't get any content. And how she feels so vulnerable standing there. She has a camera, she's standing there alone. She obviously doesn't know going into it if people come up or not. And she was, worried that it was too crazy. But she did it anyway. And, what started with her being brave enough to do that has now grown into almost a movement on social media, which is so cool. When she was talking about that fear, I was like, yes, I think that's something that we all feel. But I think what differentiates the doers from the waiters is that the doers feel the fear and just go. They don't let the fear stop them from going. And I think everything that I've shared today required the same amount of willingness. Telling everyone that I wanted to move to Europe meant taking risks, looking like a dreamer if it didn't work out. None of it was guaranteed. All of it required being willing to fail or to look stupid or to look crazy. And you know what? Some of it did fail, The Europe opportunity obviously didn't work out. Early episodes of this podcast were a little cringe, but none of that matters. The fact is, I kept going. Failure isn't the opposite of opportunity, it's actually the price of admission. So here's what I want to leave you with today. Opportunity doesn't come from waiting for the perfect time or the right circumstance or luck. It comes from action. It comes from telling people what you want before you have any idea of how it will happen. It comes from starting before you're ready and figuring it out as you go. It comes from proving yourself before anyone else asks you to. And it comes from being willing to look a little uncertain, a little imperfect, and a little silly in pursuit of something that actually matters to you. Nobody is coming to give you that permission, so stop waiting around for it. This is obviously a journey and something that I am living and figuring out every single day. But I can tell you that every single opportunity that has come into my life required doing something before I felt ready. And I really believe that that can be true for all of us. Thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Fresh Perspectives podcast. If this resonated with you, I would encourage you to share it with somebody because I feel like helping people seek out opportunities and new energy in their life, it will lead to amazing new lives for people. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.